I never thought buying a plant could turn into one of those moments you replay in your head, wondering how on earth it all clicked in just a few minutes. But that's exactly what happened last Saturday, when I went into this tiny, slightly overgrown nursery tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore in my neighborhood. Honestly, I just wanted something to brighten up my apartment. A little green, some life, and maybe if I was feeling ambitious, something that wouldn't die in a week. Spoiler alert, I'm not exactly a plant whisperer. So there I was, standing in the middle of this jungle of pots and leaves, utterly clueless, staring at a monstera with its giant perforated leaves like it was some kind of exotic alien. That's when he showed up. This guy who looked like he belonged in one of those lifestyle magazines, but without trying too hard. Tall, with his easy smile and a worn denim jacket that somehow made him look effortlessly cool. He caught me mid-confused stare and said, "You thinking of getting that one? It's a good starter plant, not too needy." I blinked a few times, partly because I wasn't expecting anyone to talk to me, and partly because his voice was that perfect mix of casual and friendly. I ended up telling him I was basically a plant newbie, and honestly didn't even know what not too needy meant in the plant world. That somehow kicked off this really natural conversation about succulents, light needs, and the absolute worst plants for people who can't keep a cactus alive, which is apparently me. He introduced himself as Jamie and said he worked at a local garden center but was just hanging out at this place to check out some rare ferns they had in the back. The way he talked about plants, it wasn't just facts. It was like he genuinely cared about them. And maybe that's why I found myself relaxing and actually enjoying this whole plant shopping experience, which felt weird because it's just plants, right? But with Jamie, it felt different. It felt like more than just picking out greenery for a shelf. What got me, though, was how easy the conversation felt. We wandered through the aisles together, and Jamie was pointing out little quirks about different plants, telling me stories about weird customers he'd had, and laughing at my pathetic tales of my past plant murders. At some point, it wasn't just about plants anymore. I realized I was looking forward to his company more than the actual plant I was supposed to buy. Then, just as I was about to make a decision between a snake plant and a pothos, he paused, looked me right in the eye, and said, "Hey, could I get your number? I mean, maybe I can give you some tips or help you not kill this one." That's when my brain kind of short-circuited. Me? Him? Exchanging numbers over a pothos? It was unexpected. And honestly, for once, I didn't overthink or make some awkward excuse. Instead, I smiled and said yes. Because sometimes, the smallest moments turn out to be the start of something you didn't even know you wanted. And I had a feeling this was one of those moments. I handed him my phone, feeling this weird mix of nervousness and excitement that I couldn't really explain. Jamie typed in his number and sent me a quick message, so I had his contact already saved. "There," he said, grinning like he just won some kind of small victory. "Now you can't ghost me." I laughed, shaking my head. "No promises, but I'll try." We finished picking out the snake plant. It was sturdy, low maintenance, pretty much the opposite of the disaster zone my last attempt at plant care had been, and I brought it up to the counter. Jamie insisted on walking me out, even though it was just a few steps to the street. I guess he figured that if he could save me from killing a plant, maybe he could save me from walking home alone too. Which honestly wasn't the worst idea. As we stepped outside, the sun was dipping low, casting this warm golden light that made the whole street look kind of magical. I'm usually the guy who's in a rush to get home after errands, but for some reason, I didn't want to leave just yet. So Jamie said, turning to me with that easy smile again, "Are you a frequent plant shopper, or was today a one-time experiment?" I shrugged. I'm trying to be. I figured it'd be nice to have something living that's not a dog or a roommate. I paused, then laughed. Though honestly, I'm probably better at keeping people alive than plants. "Hey, plants are tricky," he said with mock sympathy. "But if you ever need a crash course, I'm your guy. I could come over and help you set up a little jungle." I nearly choked on my own breath. That sounds actually kind of nice. He looked at me like he could tell I meant it, and then without missing a beat, he asked, "You free for coffee sometime this week? I know a great spot near the nursery." I felt my heart do this stupid little flip. "Yeah, I'm free. Coffee sounds good." We exchanged a few more words before we parted ways, but on the walk home, the image of Jamie's smile lingered. I kept replaying how easy it was to talk to him, how natural it felt like we'd known each other longer than just a few minutes at a plant shop. It was kind of thrilling and terrifying all at once. That night, I set the snake plant by my window, gave it a tentative splash of water, and sent Jamie a thank you text. He replied right away with a joke about how I should name it Survivor and keep it alive at all costs. I smiled so hard I probably looked ridiculous. The next few days were a blur of normal life, but every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Jamie. When Wednesday rolled around, I found myself actually looking forward to the coffee date, which felt wild because I'm usually the kind of guy who dreads small talk with strangers. I got to the cafe a little early and watched the door from my seat. When Jamie walked in, he looked just as casual and genuine as before. Jeans, a faded tee, and that same laid-back grin. He spotted me immediately and waved, sliding into the seat across from me like we were old friends catching up. We started talking about everything and nothing. Work, bad TV shows, the ridiculous struggles of trying to keep plants alive. And it felt so easy. He had this way of making me laugh without even trying, and I found myself opening up in a way I haven't with anyone in a long time. We swapped stories about our families, our favorite childhood memories, and somehow plants kept sneaking into the conversation. It was like this weird shared language that made everything else feel less complicated. At one point, Jamie reached across the table and nudged my arm lightly when I told a particularly bad pun about a cactus. His eyes caught mine, and there was this flicker of something. Warmth? Interest? That sent a shiver down my spine. I tried not to stare too long, but honestly, I couldn't look away. After coffee, we walked around the neighborhood for a bit, just wandering without a plan. Jamie pointed out little things I'd never noticed before. The way the light hits a certain street corner, the tiny flower beds people had set up in front of their houses. I loved how passionate he was about these small details, how he found beauty in everyday things. It made me want to see the world through his eyes, even if just for a little while. Eventually, we found ourselves back near the nursery where we'd met. Jamie stopped and turned to me, his expression a little serious now. I'm really glad I said something that day. I don't usually do that. Me neither, I admitted. There was a pause, and then he smiled again, softer this time. So maybe next time we pick out a plant together and I come over for that jungle setup I promised? I nodded, feeling that same flutter in my chest. Yeah, I'd like that. As we said goodbye, I realized this wasn't just about a plant anymore. It was about the way someone could walk into your life when you least expected it, make you feel seen and understood, and maybe, just maybe, change everything without even trying. And somehow, I knew I wasn't going to forget this Saturday, or Jamie, anytime soon. The next few days, I found myself thinking about Jamie way more than I expected. It was funny how a simple thing like buying a plant turned into this whole new vibe in my life. I'm usually not great at this kind of thing, meeting someone new and feeling like there's potential, but with him, it was different. I was excited about the little things, like getting a text from him, or imagining what kind of plants he might bring over when we did that jungle setup. When Friday evening rolled around, Jamie showed up with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and this mischievous grin that made my heart race a bit. "Ready for your crash course in plant care?" he asked, stepping inside my apartment like he owned the place, which, honestly, I was kind of okay with. He unpacked a few pots, tools, and some plants I'd never heard of, things with soft leaves, spiky leaves, even one that looked like a little green brain. He explained what each one needed, how to water them, and which ones were the most forgiving if I forgot for a few days. He was so patient, talking me through everything without making me feel dumb for my lack of green thumb. Watching him in his element, I realized how passionate he was. It wasn't just about plants. It was about nurturing, about patience and growth. And I couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, he felt something similar about people. At one point, our hands brushed while he handed me a pot, and I caught the tiniest spark of electricity, nothing dramatic, just this subtle jolt that made me smile like an idiot. He looked up, caught me, and gave me that knowing smile, the one that says, "Yeah, I noticed too." We spent most of the night building our little plant collection, laughing at my terrible attempts to pronounce botanical names, and sharing stories about the weirdest plants we'd encountered. The apartment started to feel warmer, more alive, and I realized it wasn't just because of the greenery. As the evening wound down, Jamie leaned back on the couch, looking around at all the new plants with this satisfied glow. "You're gonna do great with these, seriously." I nodded, feeling a mix of pride and something softer, more vulnerable. "Thanks for helping me." "I probably would have bought a dead plant and called it a day," he shrugged. Hey, sometimes people just need a little guidance to grow. There it was again, the way he talked about growth, like it wasn't just about plants, but maybe about something bigger. I found myself wanting to ask more, to understand what he meant, but the words got caught in my throat. Instead, I said, "So when's the next lesson?" Jamie grinned. "Whenever you want. I'm not going anywhere." That night, after he left, I sat by the window looking at the new plants, feeling a strange mix of hope and nervousness. I kept thinking about how easy it was to be around Jamie, how he made me feel like I wasn't just fumbling through life alone. Over the next week, we texted almost every day, checking in on plants, sharing music, even sending dumb memes. It was simple, but it felt like this quiet connection, growing stronger with each message. One night, he sent a picture of a tiny sprout poking through the soil with the caption, "Growth looks good on you." I stared at my phone, heart skipping, and typed back, "Maybe it does," especially with the right gardener. Our conversation started to drift beyond plants and weekend plans. We talked about our childhoods, our fears, and the weird little things that made us who we are. I learned that Jamie had a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard, a love for old vinyl records, and a soft spot for cheesy romantic movies, which he swore he only watched ironically. One afternoon, Jamie invited me out for a walk in the park near his place. We strolled under the canopy of trees, the late spring air warm and fragrant with fresh blossoms. We moved slowly, like neither of us wanted the moment to end too quickly. At one point, Jamie stopped and pointed out a patch of wildflowers. "See those? They're called Queen Anne's lace. They're tough but delicate looking. Kind of like people sometimes." I smiled, feeling the weight of what he said. "Yeah, I get that." We kept walking, and as we passed a bench, Jamie sat down and patted the spot beside him. I hesitated for a moment, then joined him. We sat close but not touching, the quiet between us comfortable. After a while, Jamie glanced over and said, "I'm really glad you let me help with the plants. I was nervous you'd think I was just some weirdo who showed up out of nowhere." I laughed softly. "Honestly, I thought the same thing, but I'm glad you did." He looked at me with those warm eyes, and for a second, the whole world shrank to just the two of us. My heart hammered in my chest, loud enough to drown out the birdsong. "Can I tell you something?" Jamie asked, voice low. "Anything," I replied, feeling a mixture of anticipation and vulnerability. He took a deep breath. "I don't usually do this, just reach out and connect like this, but with you, it feels different. Like, maybe there's something real here." I swallowed hard, the words echoing in my head. "Yeah, I feel it too." There was a pause. Then Jamie shifted closer, his hand brushing mine lightly. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a simple touch, but it sent a warmth flooding through me. "Can I kiss you?" he asked quietly. My heart was racing, but I nodded. "Yes." He leaned in slowly, and when our lips met, it was soft and effortless, like this moment had been waiting for us all along. The park around us faded away, and all I could feel was the connection, the hope, the possibility. When we pulled apart, Jamie rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "I'm glad I helped you pick out that plant. It led me to you." I laughed, a little breathless, and said, "Me too." As we sat there, hands entwined, I realized that sometimes the smallest things, like a plant in a nursery, could lead to the biggest, most unexpected beginnings. And maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something I never saw coming, but was ready to hold on to. After that day in the park, things between Jamie and me shifted in this quiet, natural way that felt both exciting and terrifying. It wasn't like we suddenly became this couple who spent every second together. but more like this gentle unfolding, like a plant slowly reaching toward the light, if you'll forgive the cliche after all our plant talk. We kept hanging out, usually at my place or his, swapping stories over takeout or putting together new little plant arrangements. Jamie had this knack for making even the simplest evenings feel special, whether it was cracking jokes while we watered the greenery or just sitting in comfortable silence with our legs stretched out on the floor. One night, maybe a week after that kiss, Jamie showed up with this small, slightly lopsided succulent in a funky handmade pot. "Thought you might want this," he said, handing it over like it was some kind of treasure. "It's called an echeveria, supposed to be pretty hardy." I looked at it and smiled, feeling a weird warmth spread through me. "Thanks. I'll do my best not to kill this one too." He laughed, then suddenly got this playful glint in his eye. "You know, I'm starting to think you're the worst plant parent I've ever met, but you're surprisingly good company." "Hey, I'll take that as a compliment," I said, nudging him gently. That night, as I set the succulent on the windowsill next to the snake plant, I realized how these little green things had become more than just decorations. They were this strange but lovely symbol of what was growing between me and Jamie. Something that needed care, patience, and a little bit of faith. But as much as I was enjoying this easy connection, I couldn't shake this underlying nervousness that maybe I was moving too fast, or maybe Jamie wasn't quite as into it as I was hoping. I mean, we'd only really known each other for a couple of weeks. What if I was reading into things? What if this was just some fun fling for him and I was the guy getting attached? I kept these thoughts to myself, not wanting to ruin the vibe, but they stayed with me like a quiet hum in the background. Then, one afternoon, Jamie invited me over to his apartment for dinner. I was excited, but also a little anxious, wondering if this was the moment things would either click into something more serious or start to unravel. His place was just as relaxed and inviting as he was. Plants everywhere, a couple of vinyl records spinning softly in the background, and a kitchen that smelled amazing. Jamie was cooking spaghetti carbonara, which he admitted was his go-to when he wanted to impress but not stress out. We ate together, talking and laughing, and for a while, everything felt perfect. But then, as we settled into the couch afterward, Jamie's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up at me with a slightly concerned expression. "Everything okay?" I asked. He hesitated, then sighed. "It's my sister. She's been going through a rough patch, and sometimes I feel like I'm the only person she really talks to." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Want to talk about it?" Jamie shook his head. "Not right now. Sometimes it gets overwhelming, you know." I nodded, understanding more than I'd expected. "Hey, you don't have to carry everything alone, you know. I'm here too." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw this flicker of gratitude mixed with something deeper, something vulnerable. "Thanks. That means a lot." We sat there for a while, the silence between us no longer uncomfortable, but full of unspoken understanding. It hit me then how being with Jamie wasn't just about the fun and the sweet moments. It was also about showing up when things got messy, when life threw curveballs, and knowing someone had your back. That night, when I left, I felt closer to him than ever, but also aware that building something real meant more than just easy conversations and shared plans. It meant trust, patience, and being willing to face the hard stuff together. Over the next few days, I made a point to check in on Jamie more often. We'd send quick texts, sometimes about plants, sometimes about nothing at all, but it was these small threads that kept us connected. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Jamie called me out of the blue. His voice was quiet, tired but relieved. "Can I come over? I just need a break." "Of course," I said without hesitation. When he showed up, slump-shouldered and exhausted, I pulled him inside and made us tea. We settled on the couch, and he leaned into me like I was some kind of anchor. "I'm sorry if I've been distant," he said after a while. "It's just been a lot." I shook my head. "Hey, you don't have to apologize. I'm here, okay? No judgment." He smiled softly, then, out of nowhere, pressed a kiss to my temple. It was the kind of touch that said more than words ever could. That night, as we talked through the worries and stress, I realized that maybe what was growing between us was stronger than just a crush or a fleeting connection. It was something real and messy and beautiful all at once. And honestly, I was ready to see where it went. Plants, problems, and all. After that night, the rhythm between Jamie and me settled into something comfortable, but still charged with that quiet energy. Like we both knew there was something worth holding on to, but neither of us wanted to rush or force it. It was nice, honestly. Like a slow dance we hadn't really rehearsed, but were figuring out together. The following week, I caught myself daydreaming about him during the most random moments, waiting in line at the grocery store, walking to work, or even just staring at my phone hoping for a message. It was new, this feeling, and a little scary. I hadn't been in a situation where someone got under my skin this fast in a long time. One evening, Jamie texted me out of the blue. Up for a walk? I found a little spot with wildflowers and a view of the city. Could be nice to get out. I didn't hesitate. I'm in. We met at his place, and as soon as I stepped inside, this easy warmth settled over me. He was waiting by the door with his coat, looking like he'd been thinking about this walk all day, or maybe just about me. The city was just starting to light up as we wandered through the quiet streets, the hum of distant traffic, and occasional laughter drifting through the air. When we finally reached the little park Jamie had mentioned, I was stunned. The wildflowers were blooming all around us in bursts of purple, white, and yellow, and the skyline stretched out beyond in this breathtaking panorama. Jamie pulled me close as we stood on the edge of the hill, and for a moment we just watched the sun sink below the horizon, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. "It's beautiful," I murmured. "Thanks for bringing me here." He smiled, that slow, genuine kind that made me want to memorize every inch of his face. "I thought you'd like it." There was a pause, and then Jamie reached for my hand. His fingers intertwined with mine, warm and steady, and just like that, the world felt a little less overwhelming. I squeezed his hand back, surprised at how right it felt, how natural. "I'm really glad we met," I said quietly. "Me too," Jamie replied. Then he looked at me, eyes searching mine. "I've been thinking about us, about what this could be." My heart pounded. "Yeah? What do you think?" He hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I want to see where this goes. No rush, no pressure, but I don't want to let this slip away." I nodded, feeling a rush of relief and hope. "I feel the same. I'm tired of pretending I don't want something real." Jamie's smile deepened, and he leaned in to kiss me, soft and slow, as if he was memorizing the moment. When we pulled apart, the stars were beginning to twinkle overhead, and I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Back at my apartment later that night, I looked around at the growing collection of plants, my little jungle, and realized they were kind of like us. Fragile, needing care, but with the right attention, capable of thriving. In the days that followed, Jamie and I kept building this tentative, beautiful thing between us. We shared more dinners, more walks, and those quiet moments where words weren't necessary. Sometimes we talked about the future, the scary, exciting idea of it, and sometimes we just sat on the couch, tangled up in blankets and each other. One Sunday morning, I woke up to a message from Jamie. "Coffee and plant shopping? I found a new place that's supposed to be amazing." I chuckled and replied, "Already looking forward to it." That afternoon, we wandered through the lush aisles of that new nursery, pointing out favorite plants and debating which ones would survive my questionable care. Jamie kept slipping little jokes into the conversation, and I caught myself smiling more than I had in weeks. At one point, he stopped by a small bonsai tree and said, "This one's a challenge, but rewarding if you're patient. Kind of like relationships." I teased, "Trying to say I'm a challenge?" He laughed. "Maybe a little, but worth the work." That moment stayed with me long after we left. I realized that with Jamie, I was ready to take on challenges I'd usually shy away from. Because whatever this was, it felt like home. One night, as we were winding down from dinner, Jamie pulled out a little notebook. "I've been keeping track of all our plants," he said, flipping through pages filled with doodles, care notes, and little reminders. "Thought it might help you keep them alive." I was touched. "You didn't have to do that," he shrugged, grinning. "I wanted to. It's kind of like our story in a way." Curious, I leaned over to look closer. On one page was a drawing of a pothos with the note, "Strong roots, needs love and light." Another showed a snake plant labeled, "Tough survivor, low maintenance." And at the end, scribbled in messy handwriting, was a note that said, "Us, growing, learning, imperfect but real." My chest tightened and I looked up at Jamie. "I love this." He reached for my hand again. Me too. That night, as I lay awake thinking about him, the plants, and all the little moments in between, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected things lead to the most meaningful connections. Who knew that a simple trip for a plant could turn into something that filled my life with hope, laughter, and maybe even love? And honestly, I can't wait to see what grows next. A few weeks after that nursery visit, Jamie and I found ourselves settled into a comforting routine, not perfect, but ours. We still joked about my questionable plant care skills, and he still showed up with little surprises, like that notebook or a new pot that caught his eye. But beyond the plants, something deeper was growing between us, slow and steady. One evening, after a quiet dinner at my place, we sat side by side on the couch, the low hum of the city outside our window. The plants were scattered around us, their leaves casting soft shadows in the warm lamplight. Jamie reached over and took my hand, fingers lacing together naturally. "I've been thinking," he said, voice gentle. I turned to look at him, catching the look in his eyes, honest, a little nervous, but full of something real. "About how far we've come," he continued. "From that first awkward plant shop run to, well, this." I smiled, feeling that familiar flutter in my chest. "Yeah, it's been unexpected. In a good way." He nodded. "I'm glad we didn't rush, that we let things grow at their own pace. Because I want something real with you. Not just the easy parts, but the messy, complicated ones too." I squeezed his hand, the weight of his words settling warmly inside me. "Me too. I've been scared before, but with you, it feels different. Like I can actually take a chance." Jamie smiled softly. "Same here." There was a comfortable pause as we just sat there, connected in that quiet space. Then, almost shyly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring, not flashy or over the top, just a band with a tiny engraving of a leaf. "For our little jungle," he said with a grin, sliding it onto my finger. My breath caught. It wasn't about grand gestures or rushing milestones. It was about what we'd built together, the patience, the growth, and the care. It was perfect. I looked up at him, feeling this surge of warmth and certainty. "I love it." "And you?" He leaned in, kissing me softly, the kind of kiss that said we'd found something worth holding on to. As we pulled apart, I glanced around at the plants, our quiet witnesses. They were thriving, not because they were perfect, but because we cared enough to keep trying. And maybe that was the best lesson of all. Love, like a plant, needed patience, attention, and a little bit of hope to grow into something beautiful. Sitting there with Jamie, hand in hand, I knew I was exactly where I was meant to be,